This story happened when I was around 14. My dad had been building kayaks over the winter, and we were going to be testing them out for the first time. The kayaks had been a passion project of his for the past 4 months. They were these big, long behemoths made of plywood, fiberglass, and epoxy, and painted blood red. We had gone kayaking before, although we always had to rent kayaks. I remember feeling a wave of excitement washing over me as we pulled up beside the lake. The lake we went to was this big artificial lake with many islands scattered across it. My dad had a friend who owned a cabin on one of these islands, and we were going to see if we could find it. As we got out of the car to put our life jackets on, I noticed that the fog was unusually thick that morning. Each of us got our own kayak, the only exception being my younger sister, who had to share one with my dad. As we got going, I began to fall behind the rest of the family. It didn't help that the fog obscured my vision, causing me to lose sight of them altogether. I started paddling faster in the direction that I thought they went, but even after 5 minutes of frantic paddling, I still couldn't find my family. Panic set in as I realized I was lost on a lake with no idea where I was. I paddled faster than I ever had before. The fog was so thick I couldn't see more than 4 meters in front of me. Suddenly, out of the blue, I saw a piece of land racing towards me. I stabbed my paddle into the waves, causing the kayak to veer left, avoiding the collision. I stayed in my kayak for a good minute, catching my breath, staring up at the island I had reached. It was a large island. On it, I could see a dirt trail leading to a makeshift cabin, a rundown shed, and an old gas generator. I remembered how my dad had said something about his friend's cabin being on an island, so I kind of just assumed that this was that island. It hadn't occurred to me that there were other islands with other people's cabins on them. I just assumed that I had found a shortcut and the rest of my family would arrive shortly. I clumsily got out of my kayak, dragging the boat onto the soft, wet grass of the bank. Quietly, I scurried up the trail. I noticed that something felt off about the island. It might have been that the sides of the trail were covered in trash and garbage, but I moved past that. After all, I was still under the impression that my family would arrive any minute. I made my way to the cabin, twisted the food handle around, and pulled. To my surprise, the door wouldn't budge. I tried again, but to no avail. This struck me as strange. Usually cabins were locked from the outside, with the key being hidden under a fake stone or something. Often, they wouldn't have locks at all. I stepped back from the cabin, contemplating why someone would lock their cabin from the outside, when I noticed something else. The cabin's windows were covered up with tarps. Each and every one had a big black tarp covering them, preventing me from looking inside the cabin. Frustrated, I walked away from the cabin and made my way to the woodshed. Unlike the cabin, the woodshed was wide open for me to explore. As I approached the woodshed, I remember being hit with the smell of decaying flesh. It hit me like a truck. I almost vomited, but still I carried on. The smell got worse as I neared the shed, filling me with a sense of dread. What did this guy have in his woodshed that smelled this bad? As I entered the woodshed, I got my answer. Huddled in the corner of the woodshed were dozens of black garbage bags. Flies, hornets, and wasps swarmed all over them. I could see that one had been torn open, and inside were rotting, meaty bones. I instinctively backed up and felt something cold and wet brush the back of my neck. I turned around and saw a fleshy rib cage with a spine and pelvis still attached, hanging from a meat hook on the ceiling. I don't know if it was human. It could have belonged to a sheep or pig for all I know, but it looked human enough to me that I fell over backwards in shock, landing on a heap of decaying arms and legs. I quickly got back on my feet and got out of there. Running out of the woodshed, I looked around for my family. My heart felt like it was going to explode. It was beating so fast. I looked around, I'm not sure what for, and realized something. The cabin's door, which was previously locked from the inside, lay wide open. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I wasn't alone. Someone must have been inside the cabin, which is how they were able to lock the cabin from the inside. The same person also kept dismembered body parts in their woodshed. I was not waiting around to meet them. I bolted towards my kayak, which was resting on the bank. Where I left it, I grabbed my paddle, slipped into the kayak, and scouted my way off the grass and into the water. I slowly began turning my kayak away from the island when I heard crashing coming from the brush around 6 meters away. I stared in horror as a large man burst through the brush carrying a rusted knife. The man wore a pair of waders, and half of his face was covered by a large respirator. He towered above me, and we both stared at each other for a good 30 seconds before the man crashed into the water and started wading towards me at a frightening speed. I yelped and began paddling away from the island like my life depended on it. I could hear the man crashing towards me. As I started picking up speed, I could hear the man falling behind. After a while, I couldn't hear him at all. Thankfully, the fog had cleared out by this point, and I was able to find my father easily as he guided me towards his friend's cabin, the right one this time. He told me that he had been looking for me for the last 30 minutes and that he lost me in the fog. I didn't tell him about the other island that day. I wasn't sure he would believe me. Even I find it hard to believe that it happened. I've gone kayaking many different times since then, and I would say that my skills have greatly improved. About a year ago, I went back to that lake. I made it to my dad's friend's island, but I couldn't find the other one. I suppose it doesn't matter now, as the lake has been drained. Still, the experience of arriving on the wrong island as a kid was one of the scariest things that has ever happened to me.